When building my house, I wanted to leave my rented apartment quickly and cheaply, so I moved straight onto the construction site. There were no ceilings, no doors, and no proper furniture in the house, but I was incredibly happy. To save money during the construction of the house shell and to increase the living space, I decided to build a house with a finished attic. That's basically a livable attic space. One of the advantages of this decision was that after moving into the house in my free time from work, I had the opportunity to turn the attic into a real living space. As you can see, when the roof was being built, no windows were planned, and that's one of the most important elements of a habitable room. When I finished installing the subfloor to continue with the finishing work, I faced the task of adding windows to the attic. For this purpose, there are roof windows, and I think, like many of you, I was afraid of this solution because I had heard many stories that they leak, and everyone has problems with them. I delved into the topic of roof windows, and today I'll tell you how to make sure the windows never leak and you never have any problems with them at all. I'll demonstrate the proper installation and present two good window options, one more expensive, one cheaper. And as usual, I'll tell you where I made mistakes and how you can do it better than I did. Even though I and everyone around me have lived in our own houses all our lives, none of us have ever had roof windows, and when we don't know something, we're afraid of it. So, I also heard a lot of stories about leaking windows, and I was really surprised when I actually moved into a place with roof windows and found out that everything was absolutely fine with them, and there wasn't even a hint of any leaks. I personally rented this place when I traveled to Poland in the winter, when it was minus 17 degrees, and that's how doubts about problems with roof windows started to form in my mind. Then I started studying the installation process itself, figured out the installation technology, and honestly, I just couldn't understand how it could possibly leak. So all my doubts were dispelled, and I wasn't afraid to use roof windows in my own home. It all started back when I was installing the rafter system. The standard spacing for rafters is 59 centimeters. At the same time, we have the window frame on both sides and some installation features, which will significantly reduce the actual size of the glazing itself. Therefore, to avoid ending up with a narrow opening, we need a wider rafter spacing for roof windows. These windows are usually inexpensive. They are made to order, are a stock item, and are manufactured at the factory in specific sizes. You can check the manufacturer's table and choose the ones that suit you. Based on my financial situation, I chose windows with a size of 78 by 140 centimeters. And at the stage of installing the rafters, I made the spacing 6 centimeters wider than the width of the window. That is, I made the main rafter spacing 59 centimeters, and in the places where I plan to install the windows, I increased the rafter spacing to 84 centimeters. Due to the lack of windows and experience, I made a mistake in another place, which I will clearly show a bit later. The ideal solution is to install roof windows at the stage of assembling the roof before the roofing work. In my case, as I mentioned at the beginning, I was focused on moving into the house as quickly as possible. That's why I just continued with the roofing work without installing the windows. And one of the advantages of roof windows is that they can be easily added to an already finished roof, even if the necessary spacing of the rafters wasn't planned in advance. Since I planned for it, in my case, the headers between the rafters weren't necessary. If the spacing of the rafters wasn't planned, a section of a rafter can be cut out even on a finished roof. Then headers are installed between the remaining rafters, and this way it's possible to move the vertical board to the side by the distance needed for the window. When working on the roof, I simply finished the insulation and covered everything properly with a vapor barrier. And only after moving into the house did I finally have the opportunity to add roof windows. For the scenic slope of the roof on the sunny side, since I will use this window most often, I chose a window from Velux, and for the opposite slope I picked a cheaper window from Dikea. They are actually made at the same factory in Hungary, just on separate assembly lines. I'll explain the window differences during installation. The first thing I didn't know at the beginning is that, besides the window itself, we also need vapor barrier, thermal insulation, and flashing. Our task is to connect all the layers of our roofing system to the window. There are different types of flashing depending on your roofing type. I needed flashing for metal tiles. The window box has special cutouts to inspect the double-glazed unit's integrity. If you tap on the glass and hear a dull sound, it means the unit is fine and you can move everything to the installation site. We started with the Velux window. That's it, just set it like that. Along with the window, all the necessary mounting hardware is included. Holes for the mounting plates were pre-drilled in the frame, and you can see markings in red and blue. Since the window can be installed closer to the exterior or deeper into the roof, The red line marks the installation position for Russia and the blue one is for Europe. We get more snow here, so the window should be installed farther out toward the exterior. While the mounting plates were being screwed in, you need to do a scary thing: cut the roof. Thanks to good tools, the whole process goes very quickly. I'll also try to get a reciprocating saw in the future, and I really missed having nibblers during the roofing work. Even though the process is fast, when someone cuts holes in the roof that you built with your own hands and so much love, I have to say, it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. Honestly, it was really scary. The only thing that calmed me down was knowing the roof was in the hands of professionals. At first, the hole was cut out roughly with some extra clearance. After that, they marked the window location more precisely, and after marking made the final cut. To make the next steps easier, some of the screws holding the metal roofing were removed and the edges of the roof were lifted with small cut wooden blocks. This way, we get access to the roofing membrane to install the special condensate draining gutter from the kit. At the top of the window, you need to connect the roof membrane with the additional membrane around the window. The gutter itself is installed at an angle, the connection point is secured with clamps, and butyl cords are glued in the cut areas. As a result, everything that lands on the membrane will slide down. To secure the window frame, in my case at the top and bottom, it was necessary to additionally nail battens. We ripped the board scraps lengthwise and fixed them in the opening with nails. The edges of the membrane were folded and stapled to the counter batten. This again protects us from leaks. Before installing the frame, an additional insulation kit is assembled and placed in the opening. Mounting plates were attached to all four sides of the window frame, and now it can also be installed in the opening. The frame is temporarily fixed with a few self-tapping screws, and the sash needs to be attached to the frame to set the gaps, so that everything is fine with the window, so that it opens and closes without any problems, and so the window looks level and square from every angle. Got it? Wait, I'll do it now. Carefully, using a small crowbar, the frame was moved in the right direction, shims were placed where needed, and then the plates were firmly fixed to the lathing with self-tapping screws. After securing, remove the sash and attach the window membrane to the frame using the adhesive strip. The next element is the flashing. The lower apron follows the contours of the metal roofing, and the side seals protect the space from snow blowing in. To be continued. The flashing consists of several parts, which fit together like a construction set one after another, and ensure that water drains from the roof in such a way that nothing can leak through anywhere. The sawdust was blown out from the window installation area, and now the metal roofing can be fixed back in its place. Since cutting was done and the sequence of screwing and the self-tapping screws was disrupted, depending on the situation, it may be necessary to screw in a few additional ones to make sure the metal won't be lifted by the wind. To be continued. There are some things you'd never think of. After using the notching shears, you're left with these little metal circles. They end up sharp and get stuck in the sole, and they stay there, and basically they leave marks like this. And I made a couple of marks before I noticed that this was happening because of them, so I made a couple of these marks. That's why sometimes I have to walk on the roof in socks. We've finished with one window, now we can move on to the second one. At first glance you wouldn't even notice. What? The windows are different in some way. The same wooden frame, the same aluminum flashing. But if you start looking at the details, you'll notice that unlike the Velux window, the Daiki one doesn't have markings, there are no pre-drilled holes, and there's no extra insulation. The main insulation contour is different. The opening handle is also very different. There are a couple of other minor differences, and here, as they say, it's a matter of personal preference. Some people might not even notice these differences, especially when I mention the price difference later. As for the installation itself, both windows are installed using exactly the same principle. Done. Upbeat music. Upbeat outside is finished, the sashes are being finally installed, and as you can see the window is being installed without foam. The next step is insulating the window opening. This is done with the same mineral wool that was taken out of the roof during the dismantling. First, the space between the window frame and the rafter is filled with mineral wool. Second, the mineral wool is stapled along the rafter where the window opening will be and wrapped with a cut piece of vapor barrier. A very important detail is that the top and bottom of the window opening should flare outward so that we get more light in the room. Dynamic. Additional vapor barrier is also provided around the window, which is glued on one side into a special groove in the window frame, and on the other side is attached to the existing vapor barrier with good tape. A few more differences. The Daikea window, unlike the Velux, was attached only to the roof battens due to different fastenings, while the Velux attached to both battens and counter battens. And at the vapor barrier stage, Velux included tape in the kit, while Daikea did not have any tape. So what was the result? This is how the space under the roof looked without windows, and this is how it changed with the appearance of the windows. Even the name of the company Velux contains the two main functions that roof windows solve. VE stands for ventilation, and lux is a unit of measurement for illumination. It turned out well, and with the addition of interior finishing, it will become really cozy. But I did have one failure, and I'll tell you how to do it better than I did. When working on the roof, my self-builder's widths were only enough to move the rafters apart and provide the necessary spacing. But by doing so, we kind of weakened the structure, and I actually planned for 4 roof windows, but due to financial constraints, only 2 windows have been installed so far. There are 4 of them planned, so I have 4 large gaps, and to make sure everything is reliable with the roof, I don't want any questionable solutions. I wanted it to be really solid. That's why I added this kind of beam here which supports the rafters. And it was installed in such a way that when I walk up and almost bump my head into the roof, I can reach it with my hand. Because when I lived in a house with this kind of layout with these triangular spaces you have to crawl into, it's really annoying and very inconvenient. That's why it was done this way. There are also posts here. I just removed them temporarily. The posts are here, this wall will be covered, and there will be a niche for storing all sorts of boxes, vacuum cleaners, and so on. In theory, it should be convenient. But my mistake was that I placed the window and measured it according to this plane. I thought I would come up, stand here, and look out the window. But I didn't consider that the window is actually in the opposite plane, not this one. And here we have 200 millimeters of rafter, 50 millimeters of counter batten, 25 millimeters of batten, and then there's also the window frame itself with the sash. And the window is 30 centimeters higher than I thought. And it turns out that now I'm not looking out the window, now I'm looking at the window reveal. Damn it. And the handle too. I measured from this plane, measured the size of the window, and I thought, like, I'll grab the handle there, everything will be convenient. But it turned out to be 30 centimeters higher than I expected. Now I can barely reach it with my finger. And in a case like mine, it would be more convenient to have the handle at the bottom, not at the top, but if it was shifted over there, then yes, then the handle should be at the top. How should it have been done? When installing the rafters, double rafters should have been provided. Just add a second board here and here, and in other places intended for installing skylight windows, and you could get rid of this purlin altogether, not even make it at all. It really got in my way a lot during the work. In that case you could have done without it, and then you could move the window wherever you need. And after that you could put in some kind of false wall or false partition so that you could conveniently use the attic. But a lot here depends on your individual characteristics. That's why it's called individual housing construction, because there was a person named Yevgeny present during the installation, and if it hadn't been Yevgeny specifically, but someone else of similar height, he wouldn't be looking at the slope, he'd be looking out the window. He wouldn't have any problems with this at all. At 5'9", yeah, I'm kind of short, but someone taller, he would be looking out the window, and there wouldn't be any problems with the handle either. Another problem would come up, that for him the room would feel small, but I built it for myself, it's fine for me. And here it all depends on your height. That's the first pillar to make sure everything is fine with your windows. It's called planning. This should be taken into account at the design stage. I drew out the first floor of the house at least somehow, but the attic just kind of appeared as I went along. Somewhere between jobs, I thought it would be cool to add an attic. I didn't draw any plans for it at all. Everything I have here is just complete artistic improvisation. And because of that, moments like this come up. So I hope you take my experience into account and do better. Honestly, it's not a tragedy. And it actually turned out well because there's lighting here and now everything is ventilated. That's because the window has a built-in vent with a capacity of up to 40 cubic meters per hour. On the second window, by opening and locking the handle, you can put it in vent mode. This way, you can ventilate as well. At the same time, you can also open the window completely and leave it open. Even with the window open, rain won't get inside the room in any way. This is also a specially designed feature of all these flashings and drainage channels, so that even with the window slightly open, rain doesn't get inside. The window is really easy to clean. You just grab the handle, open it, and it almost flips 180 degrees. A couple of times a year, you can open it like this and clean it without any problems. There is also a stopper and a ring in two places, at the bottom and at the top. If necessary, you can fix the window in place. It's very convenient. Now, about the cost. A window of this model from Velux costs 120,000, a Dacia window costs 90,000. You can already notice the difference. And here, an analogy with cars is very appropriate, because for example, there is a Lada Vesta and there is a Maybach. And some people want something simpler, cheaper, some want something more expensive, and you can get the best, the Maybach in the world of windows. The best roof windows in the world are from Velux. There are simpler manufacturers and models, for example a Dacia window. You can already notice the difference in price. Plus, you have to keep in mind that it's not correct to compare something abstract in a vacuum. This is a wood aluminum frame with a double glazed unit filled with argon. If you compare this window configuration with a regular vertical one, they will be comparable in price. It's not correct to compare the cheapest vinyl window with this one. There are models of roof windows with plastic frames, and you can opt out of the triple pane unit with argon and get a very budget-friendly solution. Just as there are different car brands, there are also different configurations within the same model, and you can choose a window that is either as cheap as possible or as expensive as possible. You could also add all sorts of other things here. For example, make the outer pane laminated glass. You could install automatic window opening. That's the top of the line option. You could say, Alexa, open the window, and the window would open by itself. There is such a mechanism. I haven't installed them yet, because there will be more work done later, and in the future, I'll need to buy blinds, just like I have on the first floor. There will be the same kind of blinds on rails here. They are very easy to install by yourself, just in a couple of minutes. Maybe I'll be able to make them automated here too, just like on the first floor. If you have no budget limits at all, the coolest solution is this roof window with a small balcony. That's the ultimate pleasure. Next, let's move on to some experiments. Down here I have the most basic double glazed window, the cheapest one. The sun shines here all day long. And the wood heated up to 56 degrees. On the same sunny side in the attic, the same wood heated up to 39 degrees. The hottest spot is at the joint. And personally, it feels much less hot when you stand in the sunlight in the attic than on the first floor, and it's much more comfortable even in summer with a more energy-efficient insulated glass unit. And in winter, it will be the opposite. It will be much warmer. If I needed to save as much as possible, how would I do it if I were building again? Right here, in this row of the gable masonry, I would install U-blocks, in which I would pour a reinforced concrete lintel, so that the ridge beam would have something to rest on, and I would make this entire opening up to the bond beam as one regular vertical window. That kind of lintel wasn't planned. I didn't have one before, so I have these rails that I set up at the beginning of construction, and now I'm following them. I can't turn aside. I don't like how the windows look visually in the gable. They would really ruin the appearance of the house. I like to admire beautiful design solutions. That's exactly why, from the very beginning of construction, I wanted to have roof windows, because they create a certain atmosphere, a cozy feel of their own. And it turns out to be much more pleasant in these attic rooms, with sloped roofs. But, for example, if I needed to save money, I could use some kind of intermediate option, because this wall of the house, it's the farthest one. I never look at it at all. It turns out that I never do anything there, and it isn't a prominent side of the house. On the more visible side, I would never put a window in the gable. But here, in principle, why not? And it would be quite a large window. It would be more than enough for this room. And in the second room, I would add roof windows, so that on that side of the house, on the gable, on the front side, there wouldn't be a window in the gable. There should be only roof windows. And in this small room, which is planned as the second one window would be enough for it, and the second window would be located above the staircase. That's also a great solution. Right now I can't remove the beams. Because, okay, let's say I could still somehow figure something out with the ventilation, but I definitely wouldn't want to touch or move the electrical wiring at all. Installing roof windows, on one hand, no, it's not the most trivial task. That's why they charge 20,000 rubles for installing one window. That's without cutting the rafters. With cutting, it would be even more expensive. Accordingly, if they're installed at the stage before the roofing, the installation would be much cheaper. On the other hand, it's not rocket science. If you fully understand the process, study the instructions, and look step by step at what attaches to what and how it's installed. That is, even company representatives said that there are people who installed the windows themselves, and overall, everything turned out fine for them. I chose to go with the warranty option. Because the windows have a 10-year warranty, the installation has a 3-year warranty. And someone wrote to me in the comments like, haha, warranty. I've used warranties many times in my life. Judging by the number of views, many people haven't watched the video where I talked about how the insulated glass unit on my first floor window cracked, and it was the glass in the middle that cracked. I mean, I don't know how, but there are several panes of glass there, and the one in the center cracked. There was no way I could have hit it. No way. It suddenly cracked for no reason, but they replaced the insulated glass unit free under warranty. My boiler also broke and was replaced under warranty. I bought a phone, had problems with it, and they repaired it under warranty. My wife has returned shoes under warranty several times. For some reason, we constantly use warranties. If there's an option to get a warranty, I'll take the warranty. The second pillar to make sure everything is fine with the windows is what kind of windows they actually are. Because again, how can you make such claims? It's like if Lada cars kept breaking down and you said all cars are bad just because this particular model keeps breaking. But that's not correct. All cars are different. There are problems with some and no problems with others. So with some windows there are issues, with others there aren't. And the third thing is installation. Because the way a window is installed determines how it will function in the future. I was a bit scared to get into all this myself. Now I've seen with my own eyes how it all happens. Now I know. Now I'm not so scared. At first, especially during the stage when they were cutting things out, it was pretty scary. Luckily, I was able to delegate the work to real professionals. I just searched in Google for Bivelux Skylights SPB. The windows are made at a factory in Europe and can be delivered not only to St. Petersburg or Moscow, but basically anywhere. You can also choose any model for your budget on the website. You can contact the consultants. They'll explain everything, show you, and help you pick the right one. They'll answer all your questions. And don't just hire anyone to install them, which I thought was reasonable. I tried somehow, thought maybe I could save some money, maybe get it cheaper. I'm glad I didn't turn to our local handyman, but instead went to certified company specialists, because that way everything will definitely be reliable. I've already experienced this many times. Trying to save money will cost you more, so it's best to do things right from the beginning. Also, make sure the windows are installed in the correct spot on the roof. That means you can't install windows near the snow guard, close to chimney pipes or in valleys where a snow cap can accumulate. Because our window is still not a porthole on a submarine, there are special seals to prevent water from getting in. But if there's a snow cap there and it starts to melt, something could get between the frame and the sash somewhere in there. But again, that's only if it's installed incorrectly. With proper installation, nothing like that can happen anywhere at all. I looked around Europe and saw that you see skylights everywhere there, and you don't have to look far. I hadn't paid attention before, but now I started wondering about these skylight windows. Recently, my family and I took a river tour in St. Petersburg. I noticed that the entire center of St. Petersburg is full of skylights. And if it were a questionable solution, it wouldn't be so widespread. So actually, with the right approach, nothing happens to them, everything is completely fine. I posted some news about roof windows, and many people commented that they have roof windows, the same Velux ones, for 7 or even 10 years, and they're all fine. Subscribe to the Telegram channel for the latest news. As always, links are in the description. I'll definitely show how the windows behave if we get any more hurricanes here. We just missed one. It happened before the windows were installed. I'll also show how they perform in winter. And soon there will be finishing work here, and it will become a cozy living room. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. See you in the next video.